Welcome to another Vimeo feature-length exclusive. I airbrushed the lower hull without primer. To see how the whole thing looks first, lacquer should have enough grip. The base color is Tamiya Lacquer Dark Yellow 2, aka Fixed Dunkelgelb, which is my favorite interpretation of this color so far. The tracks are painted straight on plastic with a mix of Gaia Choco Brown and Tamiya Lacquer Glossy Black, hence the shine. For what I have in mind, it doesn't matter if it's glossy. I need a solid base, so lacquers in general are the tool for this. For chips on the zimmerit, I have two options: the red oxide on the right, or a more artistic and vivid red interpretation. In this case, do all the weathering, I'll go with a more vivid red as it will get toned down. In less dirty areas, I'll mix both with a heavier percent in red oxide. Black and white mix for the rubber color. On the deeper chips exposed in the base, I'll use Vallejo Dark Vermilion. For the less deep damaged parts of the zimmerit, Vallejo Deck Tan will be my choice to represent the light grey color of the paste. Two colors for different depths of chipping. I'll start with the deep old ones in darker rust with this AliExpress glorified sponge holder. It's very cheap and does its job, but I need to get that perfect sponge type from the electronics packing. I use the sponge on the edges and refine later with a brush. With red primer, I paint shallow chips. Don't forget the other parts of the wheels that can be somewhat seen. On the unseen parts, I don't even bother wasting paint. I lay the base color with metallic paint on the areas that show polish by friction. I need to get a darker color for this next time I go get supplies, but it doesn't matter too much at the end. Here, I'll just go with darkish grey for areas in contact with road wheels and sprockets. It will be covered in mud and dirt and barely seen, so I'd rather go the quick way and use the pencil where something shiny is needed. I'll try out this Vallejo chipping fluid. As for the white itself, I recommend some off-white color rather than a pure one. While you can tone it down in weathering, I like this color as a base way more. The Vallejo chipping fluid is very thick. The airbrush has troubles pushing it, so I think it might be formulated for brush applications, which I tried on some of the other wheels and it works fine that way. I'm applying it very regularly and misty for a warm look in here. I should have masked this. Now with warm water and a stiff brush, go to town. For more controlled chips, I use a blade to scrape the paint carefully. You can combine both approaches. I like the blade as it makes it a bit more controlled while allowing for randomness. The chipping fluid is very weak compared to the ammo one. I found that on the rebellious parts it needs to be left soaking in water to work as intended. Maybe lacquer is too strong for this one, but it all worked out fine at the end. With these enamel splashes you can go to town out of the bottle, or you can make your own as is shown on other tutorials. For the base, I'll create a general dirt to build upon. Refine it and make it look irregular. Add layers and splatters. Layering is key in this project and my preferred approach for painting and building up weathering. It allows you to build up the story of the subject. I'm using old school mixing here with dirt and debris. For color correction I use pigments. Splashes effect to make it slimy and unify color. Mud one dried in the bottle and wasn't needed anyway. This dirt from an airbar park was sifted for scale and baked to kill anything there. Then mix with some fibers and crushed tea leaves to make the debris from cross-country riding. I add all the ingredients to achieve the consistency I need, adding enamel thinner to make it runnier. If you need a thicker mixture, adding Paris plaster is a good option, but it makes the color a bit lighter, so compensate accordingly with pigments, enamel or oil colors. Work it around considering gravity and where mud splashes. I prefer enamel mode as you can still work it after it starts drying and blend it perfectly as you can see here. And all this to barely be ever seen again. Same mixture as before but slightly thicker. Looking at pictures of muddy Panthers, I've seen the accumulations go towards the exterior. Try to keep the heavier mixture out of the areas we don't need. Blend and clean the wheels, also be somewhat random in the application so they don't look all the same. On the outside of the tracks, apply the same mixture. On the inside of the tracks, which doesn't get very dirty due to it being moving and touching the road wheels, apply the same mixture but very thin and wipe most off of it. Left it overnight and here is the result. Pretty good so far, but we have only started. With glossy enamel varnish mixed with dark shadow oil paint, I use it to make the mud base look wet. Also, use this to create the finer dirt accumulations like on the other rims. Refine and blend. With a pencil with a softness of 6B or higher, paint the metal parts. Then with your finger, polish it a bit, and there you go. The road wheels are mostly finished. all the running gear is ready to be glued in place and start the final mod work. Now onto the fresh layer. It will be less gritty and more wet looking, so more of this chew into the mix that is based on this chew thin down. This is the work done so far. Now I will make the blend layer between this and the final darker fresh layer. Apply the new blending layer of fresh mod mixture in the center and expand it to the edges. As you can see, it doesn't add volume, but makes the previous base look like wet mod accumulated, which is the point of all of this. On the insides, apply it very lightly. Final layer to make it darker and wet. To the mixture, I added more gloss varnish and dark shadow oil paint. The point of working layers is to build up the effect while having absolute control to make it look realistic and interesting. Well, if you find mod interesting. Grab some pure black oil. Yes, I know, using pure black, but I needed to render the tracks and finer details. Think of it as a paint wash to define the track links instead of all being a blobby thing. If you use metal tracks or workable ones, you don't need to do this. I focus on the edge of the pins so they look like they can move. This is also done to the edge of the wheels and some other details if they need more definition. This time, the black is mixed with dark brown and very thin down, not to mess the previous work too much. Then, with enamel thinner, clean up the excess and blend. I don't usually use pure black as it creates a very dark and weird looking contrast, but this is a useful color for precision strikes like this. For areas that need more persuasion, I recommend these precision Q-tips for cleanup. Get them from China by the hundreds for dirt cheap. Finally, with the pencil, make the contact areas not covered in mud shine again. Hardly seen, especially in this setup, but it's a quick and nice touch. Here's all that I used for this video. Starting with black mixed with dectan for rubber color, the two colors for chipping and different depths, and the other two for chipping the zimmerit areas. Here you can see them in action. But for the roadwheels, I prefer to use the red oxide and the dark rust, as they are tamer and can be left as is. Metallic base color for moving parts. Chipping fluid that I use for winter wash layer. Base overall color Dunkelgelb and off-white for the winter wash. I notice I don't mention this a lot, but there's varnish layers going on. Before weathering, apply a layer of varnish. Speaking of weathering, I use shifted dirt mixed with crushed tea leaves. They make for cheap and realistic land debris and don't affect the final color of the mod mix. These two are the bases of shade color mod mix. This mixed with dirt, tea and these fibers make for a very versatile mod mixture and very realistic if I say so myself. enamel gloss varnish to make it wet looking. This fuel stains enamel is somewhat useful in the later stages of mod due to it being thick, glossy and brown, which played into what I needed. For oils, black is used for small detailing and optional. This one is the main star to darken mixtures and precision work. I need to investigate the real name of this one. And the 6B pencil for final metallic finish, indispensable for perfect metal finish on sprocket teeth and rod wheels. Also, don't bother weathering the bottom of the tracks. Would be mindful on what parts can be seen or not. I really like working with enamels for weathering and came back to a process I'm more familiar with. I try to make use of products that are versatile and useful for more scenarios. I reduce the number of things to get while not compromising the result. Thank you for watching, please subscribe if you like my content, and now to continue work moving up onto the upper hull. See you in the next one.